Yes. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on a Sunday evening, afternoon, here. I want to welcome Mindy Fullilove. It's an incredible honor and a delight to have you here with us. I'm a huge fan of Mindy's work, and the idea that she could come here and speak and compliment the Historical Museum exhibit that's up right now. And we welcome you to go in and take a look at the exhibit, which is about Washington Street. I'm Thaler Picard. I'm a board member here at the Hoboken Historic Museum. I am also on the Historic Preservation Commission here in Hoboken and serve very proudly under the mayor in that capacity as well. Mindy is a physician, a social psychiatrist, a professor, an urbanist, and my favorite, a New Jerseyan. Some of us are born and bred. Mindy uses her sociological and her scientific skills to open our eyes and our hearts to understanding. And it is her appreciation for story and narrative that initially drew me to her work. Mindy recognizes and celebrates how history and meaning are made through stories. And she is adept at gathering and unpacking the stories at the edges, the stories that all too often go unheard. Because these are the stories which we must most be listening to, especially in our rapidly changing urban areas. And as in any ecosystem, it's the stories at the edges that are heralding the shifts and the community's adaptation to those shifts. Mindy describes main streets as machines for living and factories of innovation. She asks what role they are playing in making our common life, and notes that the machine for living can be adapted to face racism, climate change, and concentration of wealth. And so I want to welcome all of you too for gathering here today. I hope that your presence indicates your interest in and your commitment to our mutually adapting Washington Street and our larger shared city toward equity. And I want to thank you again, Mindy, for joining us and for inviting us all once again to fall in love with our beloved city.
It's like Old Home Week, nice to see old faces, meet new friends, and also just to have messages from people who couldn't make it. I lived in Hoboken from 1990 to 2000, and then my daughter and my grandmother went to the Hudson School, so I've been in and out of Hoboken for a long time. And my mother lived here before I lived here, so it's a long connection to Hoboken. In fact, Walter Barry, who did a lot of the was one of the people who started the redevelopment of Hoboken in the 1970s, was a partner with my father in doing some redevelopment in Newark, New Jersey. And that's where he got the idea that what redevelopment could do for cities. And also he got the idea that Hoboken had something very special, which was that it was a mile-square city, but protected on all sides. And he, quite a genius, Walter Barry's quite a genius. He understood intuitively that housing in the United States was going to be affected by a contagious process of destruction. This is even before the geographers codified this. He understood this. And I'm not sure how close to stand to this microphone, so if you need me to stand, just say something. Anyway, so what is contagious housing destruction, and why is Walter Barry so important to the story of Hoboken? Contagious housing destruction is the observation that if one building burns, it increases the likelihood that the buildings on either side will burn, and that can then spread pretty infinitely across a plane of a city. We have seen this in every American city that suffered, as Hoboken has, from deindustrialization. So if you think about Newark, New Jersey, if you think about Philadelphia, if you think about New York City, especially the Bronx, Just think about Detroit, which is probably the poster child for this process. There's acres and acres and acres of urban land that have been desertified, turned into deserts. And we all know that certainly in many parts of the world, climate change is causing the rapid spread of deserts. So turning what was a productive farmland into deserts. That process that ecologists call desertification. But this is also what happened in the Americas. Desertification is sort of de-urbanizing the city. Somehow Walter Barry intuitively understood. He understood deindustrialization was coming, and he understood what this was going to do to housing. And also he understood that it was a contagious process. Was there a way to contain it? Could you protect it? If you think about Newark, New Jersey, it's just one flat city. So once it starts, there's no natural barriers to keep it from going. With the exception of the Ironbound, which, as you know, you all been out to the Ironbound, got over to Essex County, where I live. So the Ironbound is an incredible neighborhood, but it was protected by the railway. So it was a break, like a breakwater at a shoreline, so that the contagious housing destruction that was eating the rest of Newark couldn't get in there. And so the people there were able to protect their neighborhood. Walter Barry said Newark was a disaster. And the work he was doing there, he said, we're not going to be able to protect this, wooden housing. There's no natural breakwaters. The process is contagious. The de-investment is going to be vast. But in Hoboken, we can. It's a mile-square city, and as you know, it's protected on all four sides. There's the river, then there's the railroad tracks, there's the Palisades, and the Palisades kind of swing around. So a mile protected urban space, if you could reinvest in it, you could save it. And so in the 1970s, he raised some money and came here and started doing that. And so his company was Applied Housing, and I see a nod, did I get that right? Applied. And with his son Joe Barry, they did a lot of work in Hoboken. And Joe Barry wrote a great book. Yuppies are coming to my house for dinner at dinner time, or whatever. I might have mangled the title, but you get the idea. Anyway, it was about gentrification and the beginnings of gentrification here in Hoboken. So all of this whole process that happened here in Hoboken is a process that we've seen in many American cities. But the particular story here was of the insight that you could stop it. And one of the things Joe Barry did was to create affordable housing. So when my mom moved in, she moved into affordable housing. She was, a senior on fixed income, and her rent was completely manageable. So these are great things if we could do that. The problem in America, you may have read Emily Badger's article in the Times this week, that we're short of housing all across the United States. It used to just be in sort of a blue state problem, but now it's everywhere. And the statistics are really terrible. That you can't, basically a family making minimum wage can't rent a two-bedroom apartment anywhere in America. Now, how do you have a functional society if people can't get a two-bedroom apartment? So part of this crisis comes out of contagious housing destruction, which was stopped here. So one of the things is, if you think about, so you don't have contagious housing destruction, then what do you have? And that depends then on the many, many factors, but one of them was the changing economy. So we're in the presence in 1970 of deindustrialization, the whole nation, all the industry closed. So as opposed to this being a shipyard where people built ships, it became what you see now, with an intervening kind of brownfields period where all this land just sat here, what was it going to be? And so part of the story of Main Street is that Main Street is both an engine and a mirror of what's going on. So when you think about when I first started coming around Main Street, what was on Main Street? What was on Washington Street? A lot of barber shops, because the guys apparently, had to get their hair cut every week. Like that was still the norm. And so there were a lot of barbershops. Some of you must be here from that era. There were a lot of barbershops, right? And then there was an article at one point when I was living here in the 90s that the last barbershop was closed. It was like the last barbershop. Do you remember, anybody remember Cusselux shoes? Right? Cusselux shoes? Is what?
Walter Cussel.
Walter Cusselux shoes, right? Sort of shoe store. This is sort of the way that people live. When the sign proudly proclaims that you can't find it on Washington Street, you look closely enough. That is a true thing about a great Main Street. And a great Main Street, you can find everything. Whatever you need, you can find. Well, one of the things that happens on Main Streets, as they undergo change, any successful place, is that there's some business that becomes successful. And then everybody says, oh, I want to have one of those. So as people weren't working in factories, getting their haircut every week, they were instead working on Wall Street, taking the cab. And what did they need? Dry cleaners. So some of you have been here in the era of dry cleaners, right? There's like dry cleaners. But then, most recently, when I visited Washington Street, it's been vape shops. I don't know how long those are going to last if I all become cannabis. Cannabis is coming in fast. So one of the things that happens on a very successful street is that you lose the diversity of the street. And the diversity of the street is what brings you to the street. So it's always that push and pull. Is there still a hardware store? Very few American Main streets have a hardware store. Is there still a bakery? Is there still a butcher? Is there still a dress shop? Is sort of one of everything? Or is there 30 of one thing? To the extent anybody ever asks you about the Main Street, you don't want 30 of one thing, you want 1/3. So I brought a little handout and I want to talk to you about what I learned. So as David mentioned, I'm a social psychiatrist, and that means that I'm really interested in how social structures make us sane or insane. And you may have noticed that all of America is insane right now. Really insane. So we in social psychiatry have been seeing that coming for a while. And so I want to talk a little bit about it. So I got the idea of really sitting in Starbucks on Contagious that Main Streets aren't dead. And I thought, well, if they're not dead, what are they doing? Why are they useful? Why do we like them? How do they help keep us sane? So I started going to Main Streets. And then I thought this would be a pretty easy question to answer. Now we'll go to 100 Main Streets in a year and write up my findings and that like that. And the chair of my department kept saying, yeah, so when are you going to write up those findings? But he was still studying PTSD from the Vietnam War, so who was he to talk? He's one of the great scholars of PTSD after the Vietnam War. So I was still working out little pieces of it. I was like, yeah, I'm still working out little pieces of it. Anyway, it took a long time, 11 years. I went to 178 cities in 14 countries. And then I thought of this model of what Main Streets are about. And I made this handout. And I meant to make it two-sided, but my instructions weren't very clear, so it didn't come out two-sided. And also, there was no reason that you have to plug this in. You don't have to plug this in. You can give it back to me and I'll just recycle it. Actually, it does seem to be two-sided. There's just more. That might be it. Anyway, if we don't have quite enough, I have this other black and white version that's so you'll see in this corner. By the way, I'm a big fan of Edward Tufting. I do design. Edward Tufte is like the guru of how to do fabulous design. And he always says, have a handout. It's better. People don't have, he hates PowerPoints. If you give them a handout, it's much more detailed, they'll like it better. And they can take notes if they want to. So if you want to take notes, and they can look at it at their own pace, they can study it. And you'll see on the back side, it's a very complicated diagram. So anyway, in the top left-hand corner, you'll see this diagram of what I call box circle. So part of the like, well, how does Main Street affect mental health? And so basically the answer is that because you can go there to get what you need, and everybody else is going there to get what they need, you cross paths with people. Now, in a city, the idea is not that everybody's your best friend. Everybody in America talks about community, right? Like, oh, I have my community, you have your community, you have to build a community. And this is, if I may put this bluntly, please don't get me when I say this bluntly. Pushing community is part of the divide and conquer strategy that's making America crazy. America, the Southern oligarchy started divide and conquer back in 1670 when it was Bacon's Rebellion and black slaves and white indentured servants got together and they said, oh no, we can't have this. So they gave the white servants less punishment than they gave the black slaves. And so they said, we're better than them, don't hang out with them, don't have a rebellion with them, they're with us. And they've been promoting that ever since. So everybody has a community, but nobody's community talks to anybody else's community. But you cannot run a society of 300 million people by everybody being in their own community and not talking to anybody else's community. Everybody, at some point, everybody has to be able to talk to everybody else. That's the only way you can run a country. And when you think about a world with 8 billion people, you can't stay inside your own community. You have to go out. And so Main Street is where we go out. Like, it's not my block, it's not my apartment building, it's not my community, it's Main Street, it's all of us. And there's a set of pictures about parades in there. In fact, it's right there on the wall. And it's sort of, yeah, that's what Main Street is. We all go there and parade. And the high school band goes by and we clap, right? It's just that's what makes America, or that's what can make America. If we're not doing that, we're not making a nation. We're making a mess. So, do you see what I'm saying? Is this highly controversial? No. Good. Because we can talk about it if you don't want. But Main Street's, so I was sitting on Palisades Avenue in Inglewood, which is a great Main Street, and I said Main Streets aren't dead. But some Main Streets are dead. So then the question is, what makes an alive Main Street? And this is where Joe Barry and the fact that Hoboken did burn down in the 1970s and the aftermath of deindustrialization becomes so important. This is an intact city. And so Washington Street sits in the middle of the sound urban fabric. Each of us here has the privilege of wearing clothes that don't have holes, right? Aren't patched. This is sound clothing, right? It's wearing well. Even if it's informal, our clothing is intact. And the city is intact. That's what is the basis for the potential for real health in the city. The buildings have to be there. It might seem like a small thing, but the buildings have to be there. If the buildings are gone, it's a little bit like losing your teeth. Now, if you lose too many teeth, you're in big trouble. You can't lose too many teeth, and you can't lose too many buildings. So I call that the circle. The Main Street has to sit in a circle of buildings, of people, because somebody's got to go to Main Street. And what do they got to do? They got to buy toothpaste, they got to go to the dry cleaners, they got to get ice cream, whatever it is. They bake, they got to go bake. They got to go there. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Main Street is a street. And it's not just the commercial center. When we think of Main Street, we are thinking about the commercial center. But it's a street, and it comes from somewhere and it goes somewhere. And that we call the line. It's a line. And then this part that is the commercial center seems to me it's like a box. Like even if you think about this pop-up that was here, where there's sort of the breezeway you can go through, and then they put tables all around the side, and then there's a couple tables left. That's the box of Main Street. It's like a replica, right? A pop-up replica of what Main Street is. If you go there, there's going to be in the box. And that is a feeling I believe human beings like. And I say that because we replicate it all over the world and have replicated it for millennia. That there's something about being in a space like this. You can see what's coming from there, you can see what's coming from there. There's a nice breeze, you can buy stuff. There's water, we're set. This is the box. So box circle line is fundamental. But you'll notice that there's another diagram. And this slide right here is Essex County. So when I started studying Main Streets, box circle line was pretty easy. Like I got that the first month. I visited 10 Main Streets. I was like, oh, got it, box circle line. But I kept visiting Main Streets, and it took a while to see what that picture was about, which is what I came to call the tangle. And if you look closely, not at the dots or the ovals, but at the little gray lines, those are all the streets, or many of the streets, the major streets of Essex County. And does it look like spaghetti to you? It looks like spaghetti to me. It looks like tangled spaghetti. It looks like spaghetti to you. Now, why is this important? Because Main Street is a street, but not only is it a line, it's a line in a system of lines. And you could go across the United States on Main Streets, except for a few ferries. They said that once upon a time, a squirrel could go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi on treetops. Obviously, that's done. Not doing that anymore. But you could go to the Mississippi on Main Streets. So that's cool, right? But it's the tangle of Main Streets. It wouldn't be a straight highway. It's not going to be Route 80 out to the Mississippi. It's going to be, weave in and out. And while you're weaving in and out, you're going to stop for ice cream. Or you'll say, oh my God, did you see that hat store? I need a hat for this trip. Buy a hat. So moving around on Main Streets is different from moving around on the highway, but you can get everywhere. And that's what the tangle is about, the interrelatedness. Part of the madness of America is what I've come to call apartheid consciousness, which is that the Southern oligarchy sold racism so effectively that people still believe that those people over there are different from us people over here. So it's like my group is different from your group. Whatever our group is, we're different. They've been very effective at selling that. They tweak it from time to time because people catch on. So they don't say the same things they used to say. In sociology, they used to ask questions in the 1950s. They could do a survey, and they could say to you, how much would you hate it if a black person moved next door? And the answers would be, I hate it a lot, it would drive me crazy, I'd have to run across on their lawn. That basically would be what the survey is. When people caught on, and that's not the thing anymore. But now it would be something like, can trans kids use the bathroom? What bathroom can trans kids use? So they change it up, just to keep us confused. Do you approve of abortion? Well, the whole America's fighting over do we approve of abortion or not, right? So they changed it up, but it's the same thing. And this is to hide, as it was in 1870 with Bacon's Rebellion, that conditions are actually bad for all of us, pretty much all of us. I mean, there's a few billionaires at the top who plant on Mars, but the rest of us are struggling, right? We're struggling with climate change, we're struggling with all the things we're struggling with, right? We're struggling with a country that's nutty. It's not comfortable to live in a country that's nutty. And that says that a 10-year-old girl who's been raped can't get an abortion. This is a very uncomfortable country. So, I want to say another thing about the tangle is that there are two truths in this matter. One truth is that we're all interconnected. We're intertwined with one another, period. That's the reality of ecosystems. But the other truth is that America is racist and classist and figures out who lives where and distributes resources according to that. Everybody by now has seen the redlining maps that were hidden for such a long time. The redlining maps codified this. They said if you're in a wealthy neighborhood with white people, that's a green neighborhood and banks should invest there. But if you're in a neighborhood with old houses and people who are not white, which meant Jewish, Italian, Asian, African American, Hispanic, then don't invest there. That's a red neighborhood. You can see this thesis that the world should be stratified by race and class, and that resources should be distributed according to that stratification in this map of Essex County, which looks at what's the vitality of the main streets. Because there is history, and the other thing about main streets is that they change over time. Sometimes what you're reading is that you have to think, why am I reading it this way? So the west of Essex County is the wealthy suburbs. Livingston, Summit, Milburn, all those wealthy suburbs. Many of them have terrible, they don't have a main street at all. Why is that? And that's not because they're poor and black, because it's wealthy white people. It's because the fad of how to build at that time was suburban development without a downtown. So they don't have a downtown. And so they were supposed to go to the mall. And many people say to me, well, isn't the mall the same thing as a main street? And so there are psychologists called ecological. And you can stop me and ask me a question anytime. I could just talk about main streets for a really long time. But obviously without stop, without even pausing for a drink. There are people called ecological psychologists, and they say, how do you know why people are behaving the way they're behaving? And they said, oh, it has to do with where they are. So you notice that, so everybody's sitting here listening to me, and people that come up and want to go through, they've been pausing. So Rob has been waving them through, because you're generally not supposed to walk through a speech. So that's governing their behavior. But this is a public walkway. We're enjoying the breeze. This is an outdoor event at the Historical Museum, but it's not exclusive use of the space. Isn't that wonderful? I'm just saying, this is like a little model of Main Street. That too is what Main Street is. It's public space. A mall is not public space. So one of the things I did was to think about all the things I'd ever seen on a main street, the 178 cities, many of which have more than one main street. Well, what had I seen? And what had I seen in malls? I go to malls like everybody else. What do you see in a mall? And do you see the same things? So things like, we're so glad to have people walking through this space. Please just joy. On a main street, you would see panhandling, which you could not see in a mall. You see electioneering, which you could not see in a mall. It's possible that some malls have parades, but there are a lot of things about a parade on Main Street that you wouldn't see in a mall. For example, I went to Brattleboro, Vermont, where on the first Saturday in June, they have the strolling of the heifers down Main Street. And I don't think they would have that in Vermont. So I don't think that covers good stroke at all. Anyway, Main Streets are different and wonderful. So, so not having a Main Street, being a suburban community that doesn't have a Main Street, to me, is bad or design. It's a great thing to have a Main Street. It's fundamental to democracy. I managed to spill water all over. Why is it fundamental to democracy? Because we have to go see who lives with us. And we have to, if we're going to be a successful democracy with healthy people, we have to take care of not only ourselves, but everybody. Thank you so much for myself or Thanks.
Handouts are safe.
I managed not to spill water on my hands. If you think about the COVID pandemic, a lot of people say, I won't wear a mask because that interferes with my freedom. Or I don't want to get vaccinated because that interferes with my freedom. But in a pandemic, and there's really no way for this to get into the discourse, you're not wearing a mask for you, you're wearing a mask for the other person. You're not getting vaccinated simply for you, you're getting vaccinated for the other person. It's like the breakwater that stops the contagious housing construction. Hoboken had the possibility of surviving the disinvestment that accompanied deindustrialization because it was protected. And if you don't have that sense of solidarity in a democracy that says, oh, all of these people are in it with me, then you won't survive, period. We're in the kinds of abuse of the environment that have led us to have COVID have also created a lot of other infectious problems that are coming along behind. And they have even higher mortality rates than COVID. So if people say, I don't like the government, I'm not gonna fill in blank, then what's going to happen when that more infectious thing comes? So Main Street, by just being a place where you buy toothpaste, but you see people who are not you. They don't look like you, they don't live where you live, they might not speak the same language, they're not you, they're somebody else. Teaches you about democracy. And so a city that has a great is fundamentally stronger and more sane. Now, it's hard to be, you can't entirely be sane in an insane country. You can't. But you have something, you have a tool that you can use. Now, the other great gift of Main Street is that we have a lot of problems in our society. Huge problems like climate change. What are we going to do about climate change, right? Senator Manchin said he won't approve the Democrats' climate change bill. Well, what are we going to do about climate change? Are we just going to let the climate change past the point of no return, whatever that means? A lot of people are talking about the sixth extinction. That includes human beings. Do we, Senator Joe Manchin drove us all to extinction? This is a serious problem. How do you solve it? So why do I say Main Street is part of that? I say Main Street is part of that because of this simple passing other people by and knowing that they're in the world with you. And then who knows what it is that people might do on Main Street that would help to raise consciousness, help people be comfortable with change, and where they might invent something. So in West Orange, New Jersey, one of the things on Main Street is Thomas Edison's factory of invention. What's more cool than that? So if you turn over your handout, or you have the black and white, I think everybody has it. Turn it over, you'll see. My colleague Edith Nier made this for me. We got really interested in Orange Street which really basically runs from the river in York all the way out to West Orange, to the factory. It changes its name. It's Orange Street in York, but it becomes Main Street in East Orange, Main Street in Orange, Main Street in West Orange. And along the way, you see what's happened to the American city. You see the whole process. So if you look at this photo in the lower right-hand corner, that's part of Contagious housing destruction. So all of these things, and sort of as you're going through neighborhoods in York, the beautiful churches that people built, the extraordinary number of churches, Catholic churches, Protestant churches, synagogues on this street, which is a pretty old street. Then it comes to this huge break, which is caused by the Garden State Parkway, which slices through, and then Route 280, which also slices through. Route 280 is going east-west, and Garden State is going north-south. And they cut a big hole in the center of East Orange and disrupt the flow. So kind of creep around, go under the railway, this and that. It's not a smooth flow. And Main Street in East Orange has really also suffered from this. It's a pretty devastating Main Street. But then you get to Orange, which had one of the busiest main streets in New Jersey. And of course, since it had one of the busiest main streets in New Jersey, the city fathers decided that they would sell it to developers, really for bottom dollar. Please come buy our Main Street. And destroy the historic Main Street, push out the poor people because who wants poor people, and build market-rate apartments because it's transit-oriented development. So Hoboken is transit-oriented development, and so is Jersey City, so is Harrison, and now so is East Orange, South Orange, all the places. Just Orange gets this investment just as nobody wants to go to work. There is no one to work from home. And nobody wants to work from home in a little tiny cramped market-rate apartment. The only thing it has going for it is the granite countertop in the kitchen. Nobody wants to work from home there, or at least not. So, what does it all mean? So, this is really about the line, right? And how exciting it is to just follow the line of Main Street and see America. There are a lot of these long main streets, Hudson County, Bergen County, Essex County, anywhere you go, you could get on one of these streets that will intersect with commercial centers, many different little towns or different neighborhoods, and where you get to see what's going on. The ubiquity of Dunkin' Donuts. How did Dunkin' Donuts become the most popular place to get coffee? Is a question, right? Where are there dry cleaners and where are there not? I think vape shops are universal. Everybody's smoking. And the emergence of cannabis shops it's amazingly fast. The slow disappearance of hardware stores is really something to think about. So those of you who have the color one, you'll see on the front two pictures. So the last thing I'll talk about, so the model of box circle line expanded to talk about the table. When obviously I'm doing this for 11 years because I thought it was going to be easy to figure out what it was like. What happened over those 11 years was things changed. One of my favorite streets to drive on, not that long, but I just love driving on, is Newark Avenue in Jersey City. I love driving on Newark Avenue. So every time I would go to Jersey City, I'd drive on Newark Avenue. And there was this evolution over time. So one of the places that I loved, which I had a photograph of in 2010, starting the study, was Singh's department store. Anybody ever go to Singh's department store? Yeah. I mean, it was the coolest place, right? And it's like got breaks down now. You can't go to Singh's department store anymore, as far as I can tell. But when you go all the way down to the other end, now you have really rampant gentrification. And everything that was, if you can't find it on Washington Street, you could find anything on Burke Avenue. It's all being pushed out, and now it's bars and restaurants. And not even dry cleaners or vape shops, just bars and restaurants, bars and restaurants. Even the wonderful work bookstores use off. There is a Dunkin' Donuts. Now, how wonderful that we're here and they have this exhibit and we can think about time so profoundly. It's a gorgeous exhibit and this really deep, deep truth that the only constant is change. And therefore, the only thing that we can do is think about how should we be lifting our voices to support change. How does change help us do things if we're going to be a sane society? One is that we can't survive if we don't have solidarity. It's almost like I would abolish the word community from everybody's. Don't say it. Obviously, people are going to say community. They love their communities. They're involved in their communities. They want to help their community, or they want to protect their community, or whatever. We're all in communities. It's American. But we can't just be in community. So how do you teach people that community is not enough? You got to be with everybody, really everybody. I was being interviewed by this guy the other day, and he kept saying, so human beings from the beginning of time have been in a community of 150 people. And I said, we're in a community of 8 billion people. What are you talking about? 8 billion. He said, no, you don't know 8 billion people. I said, I know them. But you think I'm not in the world with them? I don't make electricity. I don't grow coffee. I didn't make paper plates. Where did paper plates come from? I didn't make any of those bricks. I'm in the world with 8 billion people, and they're in the world with me. That's my community. But how do you live in a community of 8 billion people? Part of it is Main Street. Take care of your Main Street. And do things on Main Street that bring everybody together. Have parades, have parties, close the street, have dancing. People are very lonely after this stupid pandemic, but they have to gather outside like this. Because we are in BA5, very infectious. So don't think it's over, it's not over. And sadly, our government is not giving us accurate information about how bad it is. So the first thing is we have to think bigger, not just my community. We have to think about the 8 billion people and being part of the world. And maybe we even have to go bigger than that. Maybe we have to think, I'm part of the galaxy. I don't know about that, but maybe we do. And so, I mean, one of the things that I like to think about is, if you think about God, right? Whether you believe in God or not, if you think about God, God has to be bigger than the galaxy. And if there's a lot of galaxies, God has to be bigger than that. What if there's an infinite, you know what I'm saying, it gets big. I like to think about that because it helps me feel like I don't, you know what I mean? It helps me relax. Think about, God taking care of all these galaxies. Oh, you do that, God. I'm just going to chill over here and listen. I should have brought cucumbers. I have like so many cucumbers, and I didn't think to bring them because probably some of you are wanting a home-grown cucumber. Probably you are. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so we can't do that. And the other thing is that we have to take all this public space, the gift of this public space, and make it a tool to invent the future. We do not have the answer for the future. It's not like I know it, you know it, Carl might know it, but I don't know it. Carl hasn't told me yet. So I think it's really in the collective consciousness that the answers to the future lie. And therefore we have to be in the collective space, in the public space, in order to excite the answers to come out of this. So those are my reflections on Main Street. If you go to enough Main Streets, and you look at the ways, you look at this map of Essex County and how it's fractured, it's not a surprise that we're insane. It's not a surprise. We have created a very fractured, divided society, and we've pushed the idea that what makes you different is what matters, as opposed to what makes us the same, what we have in common. And then what we have in common, the problems we have in common aren't as important as the problems that make us different. This is a dead end. Let's get on Main Street, because Main Street is not a dead end. It can get you all the way to the city. And that's what I want to say. But I obviously have to go. I'm going to stop because you might have to go somewhere. Or I can answer questions. Hi, thanks. Thanks so much.
And Joe Barry basically, I think all of that you see, whether it's one or whatever, on the outside, I saw those places. But when all these places share it, most are building bridges down one, it's rebuilt. Building bridges down anymore, clean up. So what Joe Barry did, his father was creating a sort of economic stability for a certain group of people who were sort of slipping in terms of their economic viability. The architecture was all because of the financial pressures in New York City, with people looking for everything on the brownstone, reading brownstone up to $10,000. So people started coming in. You see this pressure. I was in Bush League. When I was a kid, running in New York, everything that was independent, storm, taken over by the Gap, politics, and you see them all here. And people thought that was cool because you sort of more authentic shopping. I was in Western Hong Kong stores and people look down with that too because now they're spending on their phone. They don't even buy anything. So, and Hoboken is something this thing is really being taken over by larger stores. If they make money in that store, doesn't matter. It's a show them. Look at it. So these are challenges I think that ripple through the society. And it's really about economics. It's really about how things are available, how we interact with each other. We sit in home and shop. We don't go out and shop.
But it's important to think about the challenges to Main Street if people aren't going to go to Main Street to shop. But Main Streets are not simply shopping. That's a thing about it. So, for example, City Hall in Hoboken is on Main Street. And Main Streets evolve all the time, right? It's not the Main Street of all the barber. It's not Washington Street is not barbershops and then barbershops. That's what they're coming back to barbershops. So it's constantly evolving. And where are you going to sell things? The mall was a fad. Now nobody wants to go to the mall. Main streets like malls are a fad. Now nobody wants to do that. So it's constantly evolving. Change is the only constant. And so we can't be afraid of change, but we can say, wait, what are the possibilities here? Always have to say, what are the possibilities here? Because then we can exploit the possibilities to create the best possible outcome. But the distribution of wealth so that no money goes to Newark is part of the profound structure of insanity in the nation. And that money only goes to the Bush way when you want to get rid of it. You've got to get rid of the people who were in the Bush way and then move into other people. That's insane. Yes. There was a point when the gentrification came right up against the housing projects. Sort of extreme, used to be kind of a slope, a gentle slope from Hudson Street to the projects. But then it became like a cliff, and it fell off, and then there were the projects. So these are not healthy things, but we can name them and we can think about them. And we must never forget about Main Street, that it is public space. People say it's a mall without a lid. It's not a mall without a lid, it's public space with some stores. So we are public and we own the public space. We can panhandle.
I don't think the Joe Barry did was he started the whole the Hudson, Apple things, provide advertising. It was also a way to do a lot of advertising. Real estate available for his work. So that was all. So he was definitely an economic engine to try to revive the city, but also friction. Well, this new part is that when I came to town, I paid $300 to buy so much. And I paid $300 because it's on the top floor. In the old days, that was the bottom floor was more expensive. The top floor was definitely cheap because of the stairs.
Imagine paying $350.
Huh? $350. It was a revolving door. Too many tenants came in and out.
Crazy.
Thank you. I have a great program about that. Now, do you have any suggestions about ways that the town can get involved and mandate the codes about, so Main Street doesn't turn into just, you know, the restaurants are wonderful, but it's like restaurants are really down. It doesn't help us be.
I think that, I think codes get in the way, right? Because you make a code for now, but then it doesn't work for a little bit later. And, you know, everybody wants to control, they want to control change with codes. I don't think that's such a good idea. I think the better thing to do is to play in the public space as we are doing now. This is the thing to do. Just, I keep saying parades, but there's all kinds of things to do in parades. Have a pop-up flea market, you know, have a day where, I mean, people they don't have garages, so most people don't have garages. You can't have a garage sale. Have a one-day garage sale. Everybody brings their stuff to Washington Street. Things like that. Very, very powerful and fun. And then that brings everybody. Everybody has something in their house they want to sell. And things they want to get away, like cucumbers.
Short version, it's a free community space for people who know how to fix bicycles, torn jeans, wonky lamps, volunteer their skills in the neighborhood, whatever that means, brings it in. And people sit across the table from each other. Not like one part about this, we hear the story about what that means. Like, my husband from knife shop, and somebody brought in the knives and said, I was going to go out to a restaurant for dinner. Or the story of somebody said, well, aren't you worried about putting people out of business? Where else are you going to go buy one less lamp that the 9-year-old brings in when you had to shut down President's house? That's the kind of thing also, because it's exactly the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a great idea. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Very clever.
Well, there's now almost 180 in the US and 3 in New Jersey.
There should be. Well, Hoboken Museum.
Yeah, let's do it. Next Saturday, next Sunday. We got
Absolutely.
fights.
I have a lot of broken lamps at the house. I bring them and the cucumbers. Seriously, I don't know what happened in my garden. It's not that big, but I have 30 ripe cucumbers, almost ripe, 30, like all the ones I have. Yeah.
In all your Main Street visits, what did you feel was the most exciting Main Street that kind of has some of the ideas you were talking about?
Well, at the end of my book, I decided I would give Main Street awards. They're called my family awards. And so I gave the best Main Street award to, and I'm going to block the name of it because I can't remember the name of it. Am I correct to say it's Burlington, New Jersey?
Okay. New
Down-
Jersey, Burlington, South.
Yeah.
And
Oh my God, that's gorgeous.
Oh, cool.
Gorgeous. Very sweet Main Street. You know, I was trying not to say, you know, Main Street in Istanbul, Main Street in Paris, right? Burlington, New Jersey.
okay.
But listen, the best Main Street is the one that you walk on Saturdays. For some reason. Sorry? You bet. The whole thing. Yeah. There's so many more Main Streets that I haven't visited. You know, it was pretty arbitrary. I get invited to give talks a lot of places, so wherever I got invited to go, I visited Main Street. No, Main Street is Main Street around the world. The difference is it alive or dead? That's the big difference. Sinclair Lewis's famous book, Main Street, is about Sauk Center in Minnesota. And I was going to Minneapolis, St. Paul, for a meeting, and I thought, well, I really am obligated to rent a car and go to Sauk Center. And so I did. It was like a 2-hour drive outside of town. And I was really excited to go, and they kept having signs, Sauk Center, 30 miles. And it was dead. Dead. It was kind of heartbreaking. So that's the big difference. The forum is the forum around the world. If you go to, you know, Arab countries where they have a Medina is a different, it's very circular, complex. But if you're otherwise, it's this other thing. One of my favorite things to see on Main Street is really the hardware store with the Benjamin Moore sign. I love the Benjamin Moore sign. It's red, it's pretty, it just kind of lights up the street. So I invented this Might Have Made Award. But at the end of my book, I put in a blank copy of it. So you could give one. Like, you know, at the end of this exhibit, when I give awards to people who've been Main Street makers, it is what keeps Main Street going is our effort and our concern. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. But we go to Main Street, that's what makes it lively.
Are there any cities that have commercial rent control?
Yes, surely there are cities that have commercial rent control, but if you ask me which ones, I will not be able to tell you.
Sure.
So I was working on police violence, and one of my favorite lines that I read somewhere was there are 18,000 police departments in the United States, and surely one of them is trying whatever innovation you can think of. I thought that was great, right? 18,000 police departments, and one of them is innovative in a way that would be interesting to you. If you could hear of them all. So that's true of everything about Main Streets, right? So many of them. And anything you can think of, somebody's trying. Yeah.
What is the name of the last book you authored?
The last book I've authored is called Main Street.
Oh, that is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of this concept of the line is the coming and going, and the more things that are coming and going, buses, trains, bicycles, people, very fundamental. You know, there was an article in the Times, the print edition today, about what happened in the anthropause. The anthropause is when we were all in shelter in place. Half the world was in shelter in place. And did this help wildlife or hurt wildlife? And it turns out that it's complicated.
Right. Yeah. Because if the bird attacked another bird, it was a wrap.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So you mentioned New York area in Jersey City, but also how that gentrified and difficult. So how do you see that balance where the vibrant Main Street, which is a place of coming like a tourist place or some place that serves people that live in that community? You know, some of it's policy, like how do you get it to keep it vibrant as opposed to having just like a entertainment? Or is that bad?
Well, I mean, you know, part of it is that if you're in a very sick society, very sick things are going to happen. So I would say we're in a very sick society. We're profoundly divided by race, class, gender, religion, everything. And so we're not making policy that says, how do we support everybody? That's not how we make policy, right? And not only everybody, but all living creatures. How do we make policy that supports all living creatures? So we're not doing that. So you will get the things that are real distortions. When this Main Street or any Main Street has hardware and you know, a couple drugstores and a clothing shop and a barber shop, and sort of one of each, that's what you want. That's great. It used to be that you know, I would just walk down Washington Street. Even after I moved away, I would come back to Washington Street to do my Christmas shopping. Because there was a chocolate store, a toy store, a bookstore. It was just, you could do your whole Christmas shopping. But it has become much less diverse. It's like killing the goose that lays the golden egg, right? The golden egg is that you take care of people. The golden egg is not what pays the most profit. And our society has no capacity to be about anything other than profit. So I'm a physician, so a society that can't be about other things is not going to be a healthy, can't be a healthy society. A healthy society has to balance the needs of all the people with the needs of how are you going to run your economy? You're going to run your economy for profit, that's fine. But it can't be only profit. That can't be the only thing if you want to have anybody who stays healthy. So it's a real distortion when Main Street becomes about, you know, not the people who live there. An example, Airbnb, right? Taking over all the apartments. Or the wealthy people buying up all the condos in New York City. So like the Upper East Side is dark. So it's not a neighborhood anymore. It's like a bathtub with investment. That's not healthy. So a good Main Street should serve all the people. A good Main Street is a great thing. Even a mediocre Main Street is a great thing. Just use it to your advantage. So I love the repair cafe. Imagine a repair cafe. Or imagine a sort of flea market repair cafe. Like every block had a slightly different thing it was going to offer. I once went to, in Berkeley, California, they had a citywide garage sale. And there were all people all over the city had stuff out and you could drive. They had a map, you could drive from place to place. It was great. I loved it. So these are things you can do with public space. Even if it's not perfect, use it. Is that a good place to stop?
Thank you so much. It was actually really pleasant out here. The breeze sustained, and cool. So I'm going to guess most of you are familiar with the museum and what's up on the wall, but Mindy did reference it a lot, and so we'll be open for a little while if you want to cool down in there. We also have some yum ice cream over here we've been dishing out. Irene, did you like that yum? Okay, so this is an authentic vanilla ice, which in the day, young kids would have carts that they push down Washington Street, and they can available. And so besides it's having really cool and yum, it's really good. So, but this was a great talk. I want to thank Taylor for suggesting it. I was not familiar with Mindy's work, but she definitely put in her time, and I like the approach. And I wish you were still in Hoboken. That's really my only regret. And we had a busy Sunday. Those of you who don't know the museum, but I'm looking at familiar faces here, you can get a digital newsletter which goes out to you weekly that kind of recaps events and gives you upcoming events. And you simply go to hobokenmuseum.org and sign on. We used to have people fill out a form, but it turns out we can never read your handwriting, so it's easier for you to just go online to do it. So let's just give one more thank you to Mindy.
I don't want you to feel burdened that you have to take the handout home. Feel free to give it to me.
It's a beautiful handout. I won't mind.
It's not required.
It's not required. There's no text.
Well, there is a text.
There is a task. Yes, it's now the ball's in our court. Yes, that's a big task, actually. What's that? Oh, the woman who had suggested like doing a free repair workshop for lamps. I'm not sure if she wrote this book, but she gave it as a gift, and it'll be my nighttime reading. And maybe we can do some bike repair. I got 6 bikes. I need bike repair. Lamps. Actually, Randy Wicker lives in town.